Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Welcome to another video. Going uncut and uncensored today. Going to be talking about more reasons retro video games have gotten so expensive in today's marketplace, why they've skyrocketed in value over the last 15, 20 years. And in fact, since the 90s, this phenomenon goes back to the 90s. I did a recent video on the top 5 reasons video games have gone up in value, and I asked you to comment on my channel with more reasons that video games have gone up in price, collectors games, retro games, CIB copies and sealed copies in particular, why these are so expensive today. And I thought I would just read some of the comments because you guys and gals gave me some awesome comments and a few things on here that I hadn't thought of and some that I had thought of, but just didn't include because it kind of seemed like it went without saying. But you guys made some awesome points. Now let's get to it. If you don't like watching somebody read on YouTube, just do some chores and just take a listen. That'd be awesome. I'd appreciate it. So let's get to it. Smog097 says, "It only seems ridiculous," referring to the high prices now, "because people were giving away 80s and 90s video games for pennies on the dollar." This is definitely true. In the late 80s and on into the 90s, man, you could buy stuff cheap. When a console was considered obsolete, people literally threw them away. Very true. Even though it seems expensive today, and I agree there are ridiculous examples out there, the vast majority of classic games still barely sell for the original MSRP, and most are far less. I mean, if you paid, if you paid $50 in 1989 for a new Nintendo game, it may have gone for $2 used at flea markets in the 90s. Most of them have rebounded to what? I mean, they've gone back up from the $2 in the 90s to what, $20 for a lot of them? That's not a real return on investment after 4 decades unless you happen to be the one hoarding them out of clearance bins. Now, he makes a good point here, Smog097. Despite the fact that retro gaming has gotten so expensive in some respects, there are still definite bargains to be found. There are still a lot of NES, Genesis, and Super Nintendo games that you can get for $5, $10, $20, $25 each, card only. It's awesome. So yeah, there's still ways to game on the cheap, or at least, within a reasonable budget. Mr. Shady365 says, "One of the major factors, in my humble opinion, is a lot of games still hold up. There's still a demand from people like me who didn't even grow up with them." That is true. Young and older gamers alike are loving these vintage video games where they're just simple to pick up and play, the vast majority of them, where you can just play them without reading the manual or without thinking about it too much. You can just get in and start shooting or start hacking and slashing or start doing whatever. One great comment I heard one time was, when I play a video game, I'm paraphrasing, I don't want to search for 30 minutes for a sword and then start hacking and slashing. I want to start hacking and slashing and killing right away. Anyway, a lot of these older games are so much fun to play, and we do have a lot of nostalgia for those as well. 80s Gamer, GAMR, says, "When I first got into collecting, I used to tell people that the lowest barrier to entry was the VCS/2600. You could get a working console for $10 to $20, and games typically were $1 to $3. My, how times have changed. Now, a lot of common Atari 2600 games are $1 to $3 still, but they're harder to find ones, or definitely gotten up there in price, and a console with a few games will probably set you back $75 to $100 for one in really nice condition. It is still possible to game on the cheap. You just have to be strategic about it. And the good thing is, a lot of the really cheap Atari 2600 games, like Combat and Space Invaders and Missile Command and Asteroids and so many others, are excellent, excellent games. Unlike the Odyssey 2, where a lot of the common games aren't very good, and the rare games are amazing, like Turtles and Power Lords and some of these others. Some of the super common games on the Odyssey 2 aren't that great, but so many of the common 2600 games are just amazing. Sega Herman 6458 says, "I want to collect my childhood, but it can be tough to collect video games nowadays." Boy, that is true. If you want to build up a collection of really highly sought after Genesis, Super Nintendo, GameCube, NES games, it will cost you an arm and a leg. Try collecting a really good collection, putting together a really good collection for the Saturn. Oh my gosh, you're going to be talking thousands of dollars. So yeah, it is tough in a lot of respects. Infield John 101, John Infield, who does a lot of interacting with my content. I really appreciate that. Says it's getting harder to find, but still once in a while I find Atari games cheap. Got a box of 2,600 games for $1 a piece last week when a local game store was having a sidewalk sale. None were rare, but a lot of them were in very good condition. Some store owners I talked to, a lot of them, in fact, have said they just can't move second generation stuff like Intellivision and 2600, that it just doesn't move that well, and they sell the stuff cheaply. So yeah, there you go. The common stuff definitely is cheap. And Infield John continues. Sealed graded collectibles, or no, he goes, found 2 NES games for $11 each that are good ones, and a CIB Sega Genesis game of the Williams Arcade Collection for $11 too. That's a really good deal. That Williams collection has some great arcade ports on it. Really good stuff. Glad to see sales like that still. He goes on, sealed graded collectibles are silly indeed. I figured that if I wanted to just look at a game box, comic book cover, toy box, etc., I'll take or download a photo of it and hang it on the wall. So Mr. Infield has no use for graded sealed games. And then he goes on, he goes, I've done that already with covers of the super expensive first appearance comics. So Infield's saying he doesn't need vintage sealed graded items to appreciate them or to display them. He just prints out covers or just gets the covers or just displays them cheaply in that sense. So there you go. That works for him. That's awesome. You can still get some great display materials that way. He continues. Another reason why demand has gone up for some of these games is because of emulator consoles like the Hyperkin console and the Atari 2600 Plus, which can play original cartridges. Yes, I recently did a video on the fact that Atari 7800 games of all systems, those games, even cart only, have absolutely skyrocketed recently. And yes, skyrocketed. They've gone way up. You used to could get the common titles for, $2 or $3 each, but a lot of those have gone way up to $40, $50, and $60, sometimes more, sometimes less. But check it out. Look up completed eBay auctions on the 7800. You're going to see some really high prices. Better yet, go to my video about Atari 7800 games being unreasonably or at least unusually expensive right now because of the interest generated by the Atari 2600 Plus, which is compatible. I love the 2600 Plus, or the idea of it. I don't have one, but I love the idea of it, and of the Hyperkin, that you can plug in old games to these new consoles. Yeah, the plug and play stuff is cool, like Atari VCS or the emulator boxes or whatever. That's fine, but I love it when you can actually use the original cartridges on these. This is awesome. Even though it does drive up the price and demand for games, some of these I'm still looking for. I don't have every game ever created from the second generation. Big collection, but there's still a lot of titles I still need. And many other generations for that matter. All right, and last but not least, Benaya Burns 4046 says, I've been playing since the 70s, like myself, but I didn't have the available income to start collecting before 1997. Yeah, it was really hard to collect before the 90s. A lot of us were too young, and in a lot of cases, you're just kids growing up. It's hard to get a whole bunch of games. They were very expensive, even on the secondhand market. And until well after the crash, or until the crash started, it was really hard to get to game on the cheap, and it was hard to find used stuff until well after that. I remember the first time I found a trio of ColecoVision games at a garage sale, probably around 84 or 5. The first time I actually saw ColecoVision games at a garage sale was really exciting. All right, goes on. The most amount of games I had at any one time was 60 games before 1997. That was more than a lot of people before that time. However, at Christmas that year, I broke 100 games, and I haven't looked back since. Today, I own over 13,600 games, 363 consoles, and 4 complete libraries. That's extremely impressive. You're getting up there with the big boys now. That many complete libraries, that many consoles, and once you pass 10,000 individual games, 10,000 different games, you're getting up with the big boys. And if you start approaching 20,000, you're getting in world record territory, or at least in that ballpark. I will say, however, that to me, collecting ended with the 360, PS3, and Wii U. Now, this is a great comment. Today, with the PS4/PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and Switch, most games require an update before you use them for the first time, which means that in the future, when these games are no longer supported, those games will be worth about as much as a coaster. Thus, I will only buy what I will play for those consoles. Yeah, that's a good way to go in general, to buy what you want to play. Now, I buy plenty of games that I don't play a whole lot, just if I get them super cheap or they look amazing on my shelf or I need to fill out a collection. Yeah, because I'm a collector, obviously. A lot of that's research material, but there's definitely collector's items too. But regardless, the main thing is here, the main point of all this, retro video games have gone up in value for a bunch of different reasons. Demand, because they're amazing, nostalgia, the phenomenon of sealed and graded games, the fact that price guides started coming out way back in the 1990s and complete lists for consoles started coming out then. There are so many factors. If you go to brettweisswords.com, you can read all about it. I'm going to post a link in this video to the top 5 reasons I believe that video games have skyrocketed in value. And I said top 5, but actually the main reason and the coolest reason that video games have gone up in value tremendously is because retro games, they're simply a lot of fun to play, and the boxes and manuals and inserts and posters and catalogs and all that stuff is just so much fun to have, so much fun to play, and just so much fun to collect. As a matter of fact, you guys may have probably, some of you have seen my recently opening sealed games on my channel. Now, I like collecting sealed games. I think that's cool, and I love, you know, the shelf porn aspect of it, of just having really cool stuff on your shelf to spruce up your game room. Really awesome. I don't mind the term shelf collector. You know, someone shouldn't be penalized for not having enough time or whatever to play games. Maybe they'd rather, you know, get out and run or go play sports or go, you know, play something on the phone or whatever. You game, you collect however you want to. There's really, you know, unless you're doing something dishonest or crooked or you know, evil or you're doing something dishonest, you know, there's no wrong way to collect. Just have fun with it. Buy what you like to play. Buy what you like to collect. Buy within your budget. You know, don't put a strain on your life or your family's life. Just have a good time and buy what you can, and you know, just game on, collect on. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for liking. If we've left anything out here, but beyond my 5 or beyond the ones I've read about here, reasons for collecting, reasons for retro video games skyrocketing in value over the last few decades, actually, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking. Thank you for hitting that subscribe button. And soon we'll be back with an edited video. I got some exciting stuff coming up. So stay tuned and hit that notification bell. I would really appreciate it. And say bye to Daisy. Daisy dog, she doesn't really collect games. All she knows about, she loves to walk. She loves belly rubs. She loves scratches behind the ears, and she just loved to be loved. But regardless, we will talk to you guys in another video. Thank you so much for all your support.